Hello and welcome. I'm here with you today with the Lenovo LOQ 15. This is the budget-oriented laptop series from Lenovo, and this is the latest model in the LOQ lineup here. This is the LOQ 15. There's also this year a LOQ 17 as well that has also been refreshed with the latest GPU, the RTX 5000 generation. And we're going to talk about this laptop here in terms of what it brings to the table, particularly if you're looking to get into the RTX 5000 series and benefit from multi-frame generation. This may be the cheapest road to entry into that space here. And just a quick disclaimer before we jump right in here, this laptop was purchased with my own money, and that means all of the opinions in this video that you're going to see are entirely my own. No one has had editorial review of the content herein. And also, if you like my content, please click the like button, please click subscribe, and please click the notification bell so you're the first to know when there's new content available here. Also, if you'd like to purchase any of the devices that I review, you'll find links in the description below, often accompanying with discount codes wherever available to help you save. And if you'd like to support the channel a little bit further, please click on the coffee link in the description below and buy me a coffee. It really goes a long way to help independent creators such as myself. All right, so let's look at the LOQ 15 here. Well, as we expect, this is pretty typical Lenovo design here. We've got a gray chassis. What's new for this year are these accented and, or these beveled edges here, giving it a little bit more angular design, I suppose. So same here on the left hand right hand side, and we can see here that we've got the same markings across the back here for the ports. And of course the port situation is actually quite good on this laptop as well. We'll talk about those a little bit later. A lot of heat venting on the back here to keep this device cool. Considering that this is a budget device, you're not going to benefit here from or vapor chambers. You're going to have to deal with a strictly traditional heat pipe design for the actual cooling system. If we look at the bottom of the device here, we get two fans here. We get some venting to allow this to draw air. What else is different this year is that these rubber risers, or these feet, have seemingly gotten taller across the stack of laptops that I've tested this year. So it doesn't matter if you're working with something that's high end. If you can see here, the thickness of this definitely has been increased. I would say this is at least a quarter inch, if not taller, perhaps even 3/8. And the same goes for these bottom rubber feet here at the front of the device as well. So that said, this is going to be an overall plastic build. You're not going to get premium materials here, no metal chassis, no aluminum CNC design. But that said, the chassis is pretty sturdy. I don't think you're going to have any issues with trying to torque it here. About 5 pounds and change in terms of the weight. Certainly not the lightest laptop, considering it only has a 50/50 inside. It is what it is. We do have this lip up front here to grab and to open the lid. And once we get the lid opened with one hand, which is actually quite simple to do, we have a traditional deck here with a Lenovo keyboard with the numpad on the right hand side. And of course we have a nice sizable trackpad. This is of course the Mylar surface, which is very common to many Lenovo models that are on the budget or the mid-range instead of the higher range. The hinge design here is pretty respectable, I would say. It's a pretty sturdy hinge, although I feel that they're a little bit loose than I would have expected, because this top lid is heavy, being that it is plastic materials. I don't know why that is the case. We have just a little bit of LOQ branding here. Otherwise, it's actually very subtle, just a Lenovo badge here in the right-hand corner. Some sticker work here for the RTX and, of course, for the Intel Core i5. But overall, I think the build quality is sufficient. We do have a 1440p, although 30 FPS webcam up top here. And also we have here, multi or microphone array here for, some level of noise cancellation and smart sound processing with the Intel Smart Array software and device built in. Look at the 1440p 30 FPS webcam in the LOQ 15 for 2025 from Lenovo. Thankfully, they've given us 1440p and not the more standard 1080p, even though this is a more value-oriented laptop offering. That said, we do have array microphones on board here, and we have those Intel sound enhancement technologies. Some of the background noise here and the construction noise outside, the cars going by on the road, and of course some of the ambient noise in the room here should be filtered out, so you should get a pretty decent audio and visual experience for your meetings, recordings, and your webcams for any of your gaming and streaming sessions. Let me know what you think of the video quality and in particular the audio quality from the built-in mics in the LOQ 15 for 2025. And I think really that sums up what we can say in terms of the build quality of this laptop. I wish that it would have been a pound lighter, considering that it's only a 50/50. But alas, at the budget price point, this is what it is. And most importantly, when we say budget, let's talk quickly about the price. If you keep an eye out on the Lenovo website or on the other e-tailers or even retailers, you should be able to find this around $1,000 US. In fact, I was able to pick this up at 1,000 Canadian dollars, which is, a bargain, I think, by RTX 5050 standards. However, there's been some compromises that have been made, and we'll get to those later throughout the video. Despite being a budget-oriented offering here, the Lenovo LOQ 15 is equipped with a fairly well amount of ports. So we've got two USB Type A ports here. Now keep in mind, one of the compromises that was made in order to keep the prices down is that these are only Gen 1 5 gigabits ports, which is unfortunate. I don't know why the USB ports had to be compromised, but that is the case. We have one HDMI 2.1 port that is connected directly to the RTX 5050, a gigabit Ethernet, so no 2.5 gigabit fast Ethernet here. We have the square tip Lenovo connector. On the left hand side of the device, we have nothing. There's no ports. On the right hand side, the ports are completed with a singular USB Type-C port. Now, despite this being an Intel i5-13450HX CPU, we do not have Thunderbolt 4 here, so this is not a Thunderbolt 4 port. We have an E-switch slider for the actual webcam here, a headphone microphone combo jack, and yet another Type A port. This one again is only 3.1 Gen 1 speed, so 5 gigabits per second here.
And let's talk about the actual application launch performance of this Intel i5-13450HX, which is actually a Raptor Lake generation CPU. So this is from circa 2023, Q1 of 2023, in fact. So that means we're now 2.5 years on, nearly 3 years on into this CPU's life cycle. So I understand that in order to save costs overall and to make sure that this can hit the budget price target, that was a compromise that was made. If you look here, the application launch performance is sufficient. I mean, it's not really going to win any awards. It's not going to wow you at all with the actual CPU's performance, but in most cases, the 6P cores and the 4E cores here should be enough to get you through most tasks without, any real hiccups whatsoever. So I think this is just okay. And just another comment on the specs here quickly. So we've got here the i5-13450HX. As I mentioned, this is the Raptor Lake CPU from 13th gen in 2023. One other thing to note here is this runs the slower RAM, 4800 megatransfers per second, and not the 5600 megatransfers per second. That was a way that Intel segmented these CPUs, the i5, the i7s, and the i9s. So when you're doing something that's very, very intensive, such as in this case here, the Windows update, keep in mind that this will take a very long time. In my particular instance here, it took well over 2 hours, and the speed here is running quite low despite being able to change it through the different modes. This thing really clocks down, and if you're running in any of the modes here that are without AC power, you're going to get very kind of, I would say, middling performance in terms of what you can expect from this CPU. So just something to keep in mind as you look to purchase and invest into this LOQ 15 and knowing about the Intel i5-13450HX. And just for completion's sake here, I've done some also synthetic benchmarks here. You can take a look here. This is the Corona benchmark results. Feel free to pause the video here to take a closer look. I've also ran here a few other benchmarks, including the V-Ray benchmark here, also from Chaos. And you can see the results of that here. These are all run on the CPU without using the GPU, since we wanted to benchmark here in this section the CPU of this particular product, the i5-13450HX from the Raptor Lake generation, early 2023. And also you'll see here the few remaining benchmarks are from SuperPi. You'll see Passmark here, the CPU mark scores as well. I've also done the memory here. You can see the memory mark score, as I mentioned, only 4800 megatransfers per second on the i5 models. Here's user benchmark, not really looking good here, but don't let that be the fool you into thinking that this is a bad overall laptop. And finally, Cinebench.
What's new for 2025? The display has actually been much improved. It's still a 15.6-inch standard display, but you do get high refresh rate here, 144 Hz on this display. Speaking of budget devices, of course, there's compromises that have been made. And if you look at this one, I think in particular, the largest compromise that has been made has been the display. So downsized from 1600p, which is becoming kind of the standard for 16-inch laptops. Considering this is a traditional 15.6-inch size display, we have only a 1080p resolution here. But luckily and thankfully, Lenovo didn't cheap out on the actual refresh rate of the display. So we do have a high refresh rate display, 144 Hz on board. We do have some sort of VRR. However, this is not a G-Sync equipped laptop here. That means you're going to be able to enjoy high refresh rate gaming and get a smooth gameplay experience without paying the NVIDIA tax. And if you combine that with games that can do 1% lows near 60 FPS, even with the RTX 5050, you're going to have a fantastic experience, as we'll talk about later in the gaming and performance section of this review. And looking at the actual refresh rate response of this display, display, we can see here that from the UFO test that we're getting actually a pretty good performance here. It is smooth motion, however, I can see a little bit of blur around the edges, of course, considering that this is an IPS panel and probably doesn't have the highest, or excuse me, the lowest response time. Response time isn't actually indicated, but I would guess, between somewhere 3 to 7 milliseconds is approximately where we're sitting here with this particular panel. And also, as I mentioned, the brightness of this display has been improved. We've gone up now from 300 nits roughly on the 2023 model of the LOQ 15 to about 400 nits on this particular display. So here we're starting with the lowest display brightness. That means the brightness is turned all the way down, and we'll turn it up in 10% increments to talk about the actual readability and the clarity of this display. So I will go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. At 50% brightness, if you're looking to prolong your battery, I believe that this display is quite usable. Even at a very off angle here, I'm looking at this nearly at about 160, maybe 150 degrees in terms of the angle, and the text is very sharp, readable, and legible, and I don't see any issues with struggling to read the text on the display. As you boost up to about 70%, this is plenty bright. You can use this all day long in an indoor environment, no issues whatsoever. And 80%, it gets a little bit even clearer. At 100%, this is the full brightness of this display. I believe this has enough brightness to be able to cover most indoor scenarios, even with a little bit of ambient lighting from windows or whatnot, or from the overhead lighting in most typical rooms and houses. So a sufficient display, a worthy upgrade, and thank you to Lenovo for considering this as a sincere issue with a budget-oriented laptop. We need to move away from these 250 and 300 nit displays to at least 400 nits, which I believe is sufficient. It covers the majority of the use cases for most typical users. And as for the actual color reproduction here, the color reproduction is pretty good, as I mentioned, because we have a 1080p 60 FPS display here, or 1080p 144 FPS display that is capable this year of 144 Hz refresh rate and 100% sRGB color accuracy, which is great for those of us who want to do gaming.
Starting from a cool boot here, we can see that the actual backlight bleed is actually very good on this panel. No backlight bleed to be seen here whatsoever, and overall the panel quality is actually quite good for a 1080p panel in 2025. And using my Data Color Spider Pro here, I did some calibration testing of this particular display panel on this laptop. You can see the numbers on the screen here. You can pause it to have a look. It does indeed meet the 100% sRGB claims of this particular display. You can see the gamma ratings as well as the overall brightness calculating in at 325 nits, which is not quite the 400 nits that is claimed, but I did get a little bit of variance in that testing, so your results may vary. And of course, the color accuracy was a little bit off, so I went through and did an actual calibration using the Data Color Spider Pro for this particular laptop to see if we could improve the rating, and indeed here we were able to get much closer, and the brightness was also better for this overall display. And you can look here at the color accuracy is pretty close to being perfect. The new LOQ 2025 brings with it also Legion Space, so this is what you're seeing on screen here. Legion Space replaces the Lenovo Vantage software. Legion Space will be the going forward software for all of Lenovo's gaming line of products, including Lenovo Legion and also of course LOQ. We got the three predefined modes here: quiet, balance, and performance. And of course we also have a custom mode that's present here. Once we click on the little sliders icon, we can see that there's an extreme mode preset available as well, and also with some custom profiles you can just define here, such as 0, 1. You also get full fan control, and you can also include this to use the function Q shortcut on the keyboard to toggle between the different modes if you so prefer, being able to toggle to your custom mode as well. You also have your DGPU toggles here, and looks like a lot of the other sliders and superfluous screens have been really cleaned up, and I'm really liking the look, the operation, the overall usability, and of course the lightweight nature of this particular interface. For those of you who do audio work on your laptops, I wanted to give you a test of latency mon here running on the LOQ 15 for 2025. Considering that RTX 5050 and the Intel i5 from the Raptor Lake generation, we should have gotten pretty decent results. However, I was a little bit surprised that you do see the issues here with the latency mon. You're getting pretty high latency figures, and it's really not going to be suitable to live music production or DJ work or anything of that sort. So that is something to consider, of those are potential reasons for buying this laptop. One area where we really need to commend here the LOQ 15 for 2025 is the thermals. Now, this is a combination of the Raptor Lake 13th generation CPU, which I would expect to be much hotter, plus the RTX 5050. But despite that, Lenovo has done a great job here with the cooling. We can see here that there's only a hot spot around the center. And even that, if we look here at later when we'll pinpoint some temperatures for you over this thermal image, they're actually not that hot. And of course, around the area there, it's very, very comfortable to to game on this for a long time. The 5050 and the CPU are kept well in check, whether it's a combination of BIOS tuning or whatnot. It really gets the job done here. And for most of the use cases and even gaming, you're going to see temperatures in the high 70s, perhaps in the low 80s, both on the CPU and the GPU, even in performance mode. If you go to the extreme mode, of course, you're going to be able to push that up to 100C, etc. on the CPU, but there's really no need to do that. You can have very comfortable gaming experience and a much improved thermal noise floor.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the RTX 5050, that new 5000 generation. We're playing Hogwarts Legacy here, and I've got everything set to Ultra, including all of the ray tracing turned on and set to Ultra, playing generally with DLSS quality mode and with frame generation at 2x currently, getting about 120 to 130 frames per second. And if we look at our video settings, we're playing at 1080p resolution, DLSS set to quality, frame generation is currently turned on. Mind you, frame generation 2x is the original frame generation from the prior generation, from the RTX 4000 series, so we're not going to get the multi-frame generation turned on just yet. And if we look at our preset here, everything is set to Ultra, and all of the ray tracing goodies are turned on and set to Ultra quality mode. So that means that 1080p resolution, we're getting a fantastic experience playing this game. Well, you need to experience it with the frame generation turned on here. So let's see, we'll pop that on. So very little change to our 1% low, still sitting in the 30s to 40s, but our average frame rates has definitely increased to about 180 FPS, which is pretty fantastic. At that point, we're exceeding the actual frame rates, or excuse me, the refresh rate of this display, which is 144 Hertz. That means we're actually maxing out this panel, which is pretty fantastic in a high-end RPG game like this. Now, mind you, this isn't the latest game with all of the goodies, but it is still very impressive. We'll change it to 4x. So this is the maximum you can do. That is 3 additional frames for every real frame that's generated by the game engine. And the GPU will mimic and insert using AI and other shenanigans 3 additional frames into the actual gameplay itself. So that means we're now getting, what, about 100, oh, there we go, about 200 plus FPS. Although our 1% lows are still about 41 FPS, so no real change there, but we're getting close to 200 FPS at 1080p resolution with everything maxed in this game. I don't know if you can agree with me here, but I think that the RTX 5050 is the clear winner in terms of the laptop GPUs for the 5000 generation, in my opinion. The other GPUs are very close to what we saw from the prior generation. The 5060 and 5070 are limited by their 8 gigabytes of VRAM, just like the 5050 here, which also has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I don't know why that decision was made, but that really does not make any sense whatsoever. The 5070 or the 70 class GPU of this generation and prior generation has basically been neutered. So if you want something that's going to give you a level up, you need to skip the 5060 and the 5070 and go for the 5070 Ti or the 5080, which is a totally another class of GPU there. So actually our 1% our lows are faring one better now. So we're getting up to what, triple digits for our 1% lows. I don't know if that probably varies because of all those lighting and stuff that we had going on at the night scenes there. Now that we're actually floating around and the day is coming around, we're seeing that our lows are definitely increased. and our 1% lows are in triple digits, which means this gameplay is buttery smooth. And I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. Buttery smooth. I am very impressed with the RTX 5050 laptop GPU, but the big caveat, the big, fine print here is 1080p. If you push this to 1440p resolution, I am not sure this is going to be able to give you the same type of results and performance. Running fairly quietly too. I mean, there isn't a lot of heat going on here, as you saw in the thermal section, and fan noise is well under control. Now I'm running here in the performance mode with the red toggle here. So let's see what happens if we drop this down to auto mode, which should fare a little bit better in terms of the noise floor. We'll give it a few seconds here to crank or dial up. Let's see if we can fly through the castle here. This should give us a little bit of time for it to settle in. So as we can see here, our frame times are still fantastic. 5 milliseconds, which is great, as flat as can be. So no real issues with pushing out those frame rates. Our 1% lows are thankfully still well above 60 FPS. And at this point, just talking simply at my normal volume level, I've overcome the actual noise from the fans on this particular laptop, which is unheard of. That's not something you could have done even with many 4000 generation, or certainly not with 3000 generation laptop GPUs. So this is definitely a step forward, but like I said, there's lots of caveats that need to be taken into consideration. Let's jump in now and see what the performance looks like if we hook this up to an external display and push this to 1440p resolution. Alright, after a quick swap of monitors here, we're now plugged in via HDMI using the RTX 5050 to this monitor here, which is a 1440p monitor. So we're at 2K resolution now, DLSS set to quality mode. We're going to turn this back down to frame generation at 2x to see how well the 5050 can perform. We'll leave all of the graphical settings at ultra since we want to keep everything as fairly level as possible. We're starting out here around the castle, so I'm already seeing that the frame times are, I think we're exceeding the VRAM limits here probably. Yeah, we're getting some serious stutters. Oh, there we go. We'll give it a minute or two here for the textures to load and all of the pop-in and stuff to happen. We're seeing some frame tearing here on this display. So it's starting to level out now. We're getting 1% lows of about 33 frames per second, which is much better. Like I said, that would be a console-like experience at the worst. Of course, your average frame rate is much higher than that. We'll grab frame generation at 3x. We're using up most of the VRAM here, that is for sure. It's 7 gigs or not, or more than that. Okay, so our average frame rate has jumped up now. We're getting to about 103 FPS. We're crossing into the triple digits on occasion. Our frame times graph is bizarre. Don't understand what's happening there. It cannot be 0.8 milliseconds. And our 1% lows are still not hitting 30 FPS. So we're going to get certainly frame drops here in this game, which happens a lot in this particular engine, particularly with ray tracing turned on. We have all of the ray tracing stuff enabled right now and set to ultra. And this is the cream of the crop here, the creme de la creme for the RTX 5050 and what it can do. So this is, the claim to fame for the RTX 5000 generation, multi-frame generation at 4x. For every real frame, we're now inserting 3 frames into the game. So we should be able to use those AI goodies. I'm still seeing some textures and frame pop in because, yeah, our memory usage is well above 7 gigs here. Nonetheless, even at 2K resolution, I would say this is actually fairly good gameplay. 130 FPS is nothing to laugh at. I mean, we've got 144 hertz display built into the panel. This one here is a 2K 180 hertz display, so it's very playable. The gameplay is smooth with the exception of a few occasional stutters here and there. Okay, so here we are back in the game after a reboot and having turned off all of the ray tracing features. Here we are back in the game sitting at about 30 FPS for our 1% lows and 80 FPS for our averages here. And let's take a look at the settings again. So here we're running again to 1440p, 2K resolution, DLSS quality, and frame generation at 2x, which is the old school frame generation, uncapped frame rates, and we've now turned off all of the ray tracing features, leaving all of the other presets to ultra. But as we roam around here, we're getting fairly good frame rates, but 1% lows are pretty bad. Certainly nowhere ideal. Now let's see if we can toggle frame generation to 3x. We're now getting triple digits for our average frame rates with 1% low, still at around 30 FPS, not quite 30 FPS. What we'd love to see is those 1% lows to be around 60 FPS for a very smooth gameplay experience. Nonetheless, frame generation is doing what it's intended to and what it's marketed to do. We're certainly boosting our average frame rates quite a bit. So finally, we'll toggle it to 4x frame generation. This is the highlight and the peak of what the RTX 5000 generations frame generation technology can do, multi-frame generation as it's called. And now, as we can see here, we're well into the triple digits at 150 FPS for our 2K resolution gameplay. Our 1% lows are still kind of awful at 25 FPS, but it is what it is, I suppose. The average frame rates are nice and smooth, 140, 130 FPS. If you're looking to buy this year, the LOQ 15 with the RTX 5050 is a serious contender. You guys should also all be looking at the RTX 5050, and particularly if you're looking at budget and value-oriented gaming, you should be considering an RTX 5050 anyway. At 1080p resolution, it is doing a fantastic job with 8 gigs of VRAM. And with multi-frame generation, you're going to get some really nice frame rates across a multitude of games. Now, this isn't the only game that I've tested. I've tested esports games as well in a dedicated video, and I've also done some dedicated testing of a few other games. I'll link those two videos at the end of this review. Please go and check those out for additional looks at other games and how they benchmark across the RTX 5050 at 1080p resolution on the native display panel. I did not test those on external displays, but it is what it is. So all right, let's talk about battery life. So, well, this laptop here is equipped with a 60 watt hour battery, although there is an option to spec this up to an 80 watt hour option as well. And that said here, if you look at the actual figures from what's reported by Lenovo in the spec sheet itself, they're claiming about 3.5 hours with a 60 watt hour battery and about 5.5 hours for the 80 watt hour model. Now, my testing here proved something very similar in about, regular testing or regular usage with, mixed workloads, watching some videos, editing text, writing a script, having a messenger window opener too, and just, light multitasking workflows. I got roughly about 2.5 hours of battery life on this particular laptop. Now, it doesn't help the fact that we've got only a i5 13th generation CPU in here. That's Raptor Lake. Those are not efficient. They are very, very hot and they consume a lot of power. This CPU here, despite being an i5, is rated nominally for 55 watts. So you're not going to be winning any battery life awards with this particular laptop. Now, if you do want to get something that is more battery efficient, you should be looking at something with the Lunar Lake laptop CPUs. Those also have amazing integrated graphics with Arc on board as well. You can do some pretty nice low to medium settings gaming at 1080p, 30 FPS or so. But this one here, that is going to be the story for the battery life. However, it does support USB Type-C charging here using the port on the right-hand side, and you can use up to 100 watts of Type-C charging to keep this powered up while you're on the go. So you don't necessarily need to carry the 170 watt brick that's included with my 5050 equipped model here for the RTX 5050 and the LOQ 15 for 2025.
Communications is another area where value, in order to achieve the value price segment, things were cut. So in terms of Wi-Fi here, we only have Wi-Fi 6 on board, not even Wi-Fi 6E, and speeds are going to be just pretty middling around most of the house. So I've tested in a few different locations. It's not going to break the bank. And as for Bluetooth, we're still at Bluetooth 5.2. Luckily, this is an M.2 replaceable card. So if you wish, you can buy a $30 thing on Amazon to swap in a new Wi-Fi 7 card when you're ready for that upgrade and get the latest version of Bluetooth as well. Another nice feature of the LOQ 15 is that the SSD provided here is very good. This is a Micron 500 gig SSD in my particular unit, although you can configure this through Lenovo's website or get it through e-tailers at varying different amounts of storage configuration. The nice thing though is that even at this budget price point, Lenovo didn't cheap out and give us a very slow SSD. Rather, these are living up to their Gen 4 speeds, and this is a very good read performance, although write performance could be a lot better. I think this is very fair considering most of the time you're going to be reading and loading downloading games and playing them. And here's a look at the disk mark score. And of course, you've got an extra slot here where you can replace another NVMe Gen 4 SSD for a potential up to 4x4, 8 terabytes of total storage space in the budget offering.
Where I think we'll wrap up the review here. This is really all I have to say about this laptop. I think if you understand for what it is, a value-oriented laptop that gives you RTX 5000 generation and multi-frame gen at your fingertips with the RTX 5050, that in a budget value package, then I think you're gonna love this laptop. The LOQ 15 is fantastic, and also great prices. Why, if you keep an eye out for sales on their website or even on retailers or e-tailers such as Best Buy, etc., you should be able to snag this for around $1,000 as we head into the back-to-school season. I think this is going to be a great buy for many students and laptop enthusiasts like yourselves. Okay, we'll wrap up the video here. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you like my video. Please click the like button, click subscribe, and click that notification bell so you're the first to know when there's new content available here. And also, if you like my videos, please consider supporting the channel by clicking on the coffee link. It really goes a long way to help independent creators such as myself. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.